NDPA presents the Water Safety Champion Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the NDPA Water Safety Champion Podcast. Happy to be with you again. Adam Katchmarchi, the CEO of the NDPA, joined by my colleague, half of the Water Safety Odd Couple, Alissa Magrum. Alissa, good to see you today.
Hey, you too. Good to hear you.
Good to hear. I know, right? We're doing audio only. I know we just had that discussion, but good to hear you. At least the viewers can know I can see you and our guest today. So we're going to have a full-on conversation. But I have to say, this is a conversation I've been looking forward to, not only because of the individual, but because of the, really importance of boating safety. And, at NDPA, we care about all drownings, all bodies of water, but we know the majority of adults are drowning in natural waterways, and that may, in many ways, involve the way that they're recreating on the water, which in many ways can be paddle sports, traditional boating activities. So, really keeping in mind the safety aspects of that are critically important. So I am thrilled with the guest we have today, who is Peg Phillips, the Executive Director of the National Safe Boating Council. And if you have not checked out the National Safe Boating Council, and especially their Wear It campaign, please go do it, because I know they put a ton of effort in every year with the U.S. Coast Guard and a ton of their partners to spread the importance and the information about boating and water safety. So, Peg, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. Great to see you both.
Great to have you on. So, Peg, let's just dive right in. I'm going to ask you our traditional first question. What is your water story?
Oh, wow. Great water story. So I grew up on a family dairy farm, and the back part of the property was the Broad River. This is up in Northeast Georgia. And so those hot Georgia days working out on the farm, everybody kind of ended up in the river at the end of the day. And of course, I was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old living there. And so I didn't know about water safety at the time. But I have memories of us just, jumping off huge boulders into the Broad River with not a care, right? No life jackets, no water safety whatsoever. And all just kind of ending up in the water. So yeah, I grew up in that environment, and very shortly after that, after living there for about 4 years, I was adopted. I didn't know that back then, but I was actually living in a foster home that I grew up in on the farm, and I was adopted and moved to St. Simon's Island, Georgia. So another, huge opportunity to be around water, a little bit different this time. I'm in a saltwater environment, a big boating area, big fishing area. And one of my first memories with this new family was they had no idea what skills I had, right? They had just gotten this 6-year-old little girl, but them taking me to the YMCA for swimming lessons, and us sitting at the edge of the pool with our legs dangling over the side. And I just jumped in the pool and swam to the deep end. And the swimming instructor called my mother.
Great.
And said, I don't think she needs swimming lessons.
Oh, I love this so much. I've heard a lot of water stories on this podcast, and this one, Peg, yours might be my favorite so far.
Oh, that's great.
So then where did you go? How did you go from the YMCA to where you are now?
Yeah, so the first picture that I have of me wearing a life jacket is I'm 6 years old. I'm with this new family, and they have a powerboat. And so there's a picture of me on this powerboat with the orange life jacket around my neck, just sitting in the back. I'm missing some of my front teeth, but that is my first image that I have of me on a boat. Probably was the first time that I ever been on a boat, because at the farm we didn't have boating, but definitely had the swimming there. So power boating was introduced to me at a very young age, 6 years old. Skiing and tubing and that sort of thing, the water sports that comes along with that. And then the family sold the boat, I would say within maybe 3 years. And I quickly, I guess my personality came from this outdoors living that I had done for 4 years on this farm. But I was the only outdoors person in this new family. So I was out every morning, left the house every morning in the summertime when I was in school, and was either doing something around water or wandering around looking for it, adventure hunting in the woods.
Looking for
Was
water.
Yeah, it was kind of my thing as a kid, was just very adventurous, outdoorsy, not afraid of anything. So knowing what I know now, there was certainly a good level of risk associated with some of the things. But I think a lot of us as adults can look back on that, especially in the 60s and 70s. We weren't as vocal about water safety as we are today.
And so, Peg, I know you, before you came to the council, had a long professional career in boating. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved in the professional boating world.
Yeah, so I started kayaking. I would say in my teens, early 20s, I got introduced to kayaking. And I have to say, the first kayak that I actually bought from an outfitters, I bought it at Southeast Adventure Outfitters on St. Simon's Island. And I went about it completely wrong. I went in and I bought this kayak without asking them any questions. And I got it on the water and I hated it. So a couple trips out, I'm hating this kayak. And I go back in and I said, I hate that kayak. And the owner looked at it and said, well, it's because it's too big for you. It was really wide, and I'm a petite person. And he said, yeah, of course you're going to just be fatigued. It doesn't fit you at all. So I learned something from that experience with them. They took that kayak back, they fitted me properly, and gave me some lessons and put me out. And then, it changed my whole world to kayaking. So thank goodness I had that exposure, because otherwise I would have just not liked kayaking. And I meet so many people that have a bad experience like that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
initially, and it can be so different if we just have some interaction with a professional and they can put us in a get us the right gear and put us in some equipment that fits us. So I started paddling in my teens and 20s, and then went away to college, got a bachelor's degree in marketing, and went to work for um, the corporate world. And I have to say, the whole time I was in it, I did not enjoy it. um, and then around 2005, I started just kind of taking a look at my life and saying, I wonder if I could make a career out of something that I have a passion about and something that I really enjoy doing. And so I kind of carried this outdoorsy, adventurous kayaking hobby of mine to the next level. And I became an ACA certified instructor, went through a couple of their courses. Then I went through the Florida Master Naturalist program. This was a span of a few years,
Hmm.
so that I could learn more about the environment and be able to give interpretive tours. And I started volunteering for organizations and state parks, giving kayaking tours, kayaking lessons. And eventually, a nonprofit approached me and said, we love what you're doing. Why don't you just come work for us? And so I went to work for a nonprofit and I created these programs for them. And we started a summer camp for at risk youth
Hmm.
down in Estero, Florida. And 300 kids every summer came through that program, just exposing them, and it was really interesting. Some of those kids lived within a mile of the state park and had never been to the state park. They
Mm-hmm.
lived within 15 minutes of the beach and had never been to the beach.
Wow.
It was really interesting. So as you can imagine, as those kids would come into the state park and get around that boat ramp environment and see the equipment out there, the kayaks and the paddles and so forth, um, I think there were some that were kind of adventurous, like the kid that I was, but for the most part, I would say they were fearful and just not real anxious to jump in that kayak or anything. So what I used to do whenever I had a new group come in, and I had middle school kids one week and then high school the next week, is I would put an inherently buoyant life jacket on and I would just walk down that boat ramp right into the river. And then I would try to dunk my head under and show them that I just wasn't capable of doing that. And just showing them that
Yeah.
they would want to put oh, I want to do that. So they'd put a life jacket on and get in the river and try to dunk their head under. And but it just showed them to trust their life jacket.
Yeah.
You might fall off of this kayak, but trust that life jacket. It is going to keep your head above the water. And so we did that. I did historical kayaking tours along the river, and just being out in the waterways around Southwest Florida, I became very aware of the need for more boating safety messaging and legislation. So I became involved with the Florida Boating Safety Advisory Committee. They put me on a non-motorized boat working group, and got involved on the policy side of things,
Mhm.
for mandatory education, um, life jacket wear, those sorts of mandates that can come down from a state level, and then just exposure, for giving on water training and so forth. So I gained that exposure on the boating side, and at the same time, I was very quickly put in charge of this nonprofit. So spent 9 years leading a nonprofit organization in Southwest Florida. So that when this position opened up, I looked at it and thought, wow, that is just written for me. I take this now
Mhm.
from a state and regional level to a national level. And I applied for it, and 2 weeks later, I was offered the position.
That's incredible. Well, and I've been familiar with the Safe Boating Council for quite some time, and I will admit when Virgil, who had your role prior to you coming in, when he announced that he was moving on into retirement, I was like, oh my gosh, how are they going to find someone to fill, frankly, Virgil's big shoes? And I mean, you have done it masterfully. To watch how the council has evolved and grown, and even from the conference to your campaigns, you should feel incredibly proud of all the work the council's doing to keep boaters safe around this country. Um, Alyssa, anything you want to jump into, or?
I just I just love hearing I loved hearing your water story and how you made it into this into your current role. And we've done a few things together. I spoke at the conference, but I don't know a lot. Like, I'm just excited and kind of enthralled with this whole I'm a stand-up paddler, so I like to go out on the water. And this I'm interested in talking with you about the sort of the boating and water safety, and then sort of the general water safety. I know I work a lot with families. I know you've worked with Dana Gage from the LV Project for a lot of things, and she's been really instrumental in helping us kind of bridge that, like, the open water and the boating water safety side of things with other sides of drowning prevention and water safety. So no, I don't, I'm just kind of really happy to be part of this conversation. And I just appreciate the work, Peg, that you and the council do. I know in Texas, the Wear It campaign, we've used it. We've used Wear It Texas. We've used it for different organizations, the branding of that particular campaign. And we've put logos on our billboards when I was at Collins Hope. So it's just fun to be part of this conversation. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Yeah, and you bring up, thank you for those kind words. You bring up just an important component of our boating safety is our Waves of Hope program. And the
Yep.
Waves of Hope is a coalition of individuals and family members who have in some way been impacted by a boating or open water tragedy. And we use their stories not to scare people, because boating is my favorite thing to do. So I want people to enjoy boating. And if we really think about it, 100 million people go boating every year. It is a relatively safe activity to participate in. But there are certainly, measurable by the Coast Guard incidents each year where we have
Mhm.
property damage and injuries and unfortunately deaths. So we use our Waves of Hope stories and their experience to educate boaters. Most of their stories involve something that was preventable. So if a life jacket had been worn, and the Coast Guard statistics will stand behind this. 80%, 85% of drowning victims from the boating environment are not wearing a life jacket. So just think about how many
Yep.
of those deaths could be preventable. Attaching that engine cutoff switch, for
Those
example, which is now federal law, would prevent so many propeller strikes or runaway boats. So it's just using their stories to educate, so that hopefully we can have a cultural shift, and what we'd really like to get to is a point where um, and I nothing against you, Adam, but you're the only male on the call here. But I think it's both sexes, but I think male more, where if you just think of a group of teenage boys, for example, getting on a boat, and maybe you have 4 or 5 teenage boys getting on a boat, and one of them is wearing a life jacket. The perception would be that that one kid is a weak swimmer. We want to shift that perception to that one kid is the
It's the
real
smart
boater.
one.
Well, he's the
Yeah.
real boater because he's
Yeah.
wearing boating gear, right? And it's just like any other sport. We have our gear. And a cyclist wears a helmet,
Mhm.
has, you know, certain brightly colored clothing and helmet and their gloves, and they have gear for that sport. Downhill skiing, they have gear for that sport. And life jackets can be um, viewed in that same way, as this is the gear that a real boater wears. And we really want that cultural shift to happen.
That is that an ad campaign, or is that something that's coming out as an ad campaign? Because that's amazing. And I think that as a person who mountain bikes and skis and stand-up paddles and swims, like all the gear that I have in my world, like that resonates like so loudly with me in particular. I'm not a male and I'm not a teenage male or a young whatever, but I think that message alone of, do you have the gear you have, and you know, this is your gear, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah, it is. It's our current messaging in our campaign. And if you
Okay.
look at what we really try to do is normalize life jacket wear.
Yeah.
So as we're through all of our campaigns, if you look at the images and the videos that we have, we are just normalizing it and showing such a variety of life jackets too, whether it's an inflatable or inherently buoyant or a belt pack. Just wear a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket. You know, you've got an array of styles and colors to choose from. As long as it's U.S. Coast Guard approved, you've got the right gear.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and you know, Peg, there's like 30 directions I want to go with what you just said, but you know, I don't think, I think Alissa, I may have shared this on the podcast before, but you know, I was 18, water safety instructor, lifeguard instructor, and I made some stupid decisions around natural water that, you know, frankly, it turned out like I had some bumps and bruises from what I did, but it was nothing that
Yeah.
you know, was significant, thank God, but it could have been. And you know, and this is what I think is challenging. Like I was in the water safety conversation even at that point, and I knew I was making a bad choice, but still made the choice, right? So there's a lot we still have to overcome, and that's a difficult age group, right? The, you know, the 15 to 29, 35-year-old males who, you know, think they're invincible. And our statistics show, it's interesting, you know, above the age of 1, the majority of drowning victims are male, but you know, above the age of 15, that at really age 15, that drowning risk triples for males, where it doesn't so much for females. And so, gentlemen listening, yes, I'll own it for all of us. We make some unfortunate decisions sometimes.
Well,
Yeah,
I've made some of my own, just FYI. Like,
no,
I
yeah,
think we
why
all,
not?
like I was
Thanks for
Peg, when
making
you
me
were
feel better,
talking
Alyssa.
about the jumping off rocks into the, you know, as a kid or whatever. I mean, like you know, my own water story shifted from, like, the reason I got involved with Colin's Hope was because my daughter's preschool classmate was Colin, and he drowned in a lifeguarded pool. And for me, I've looked at how did my behaviors around water as a competitive triathlete, as a swimmer, as a parent raising a child, you know, how did that shift when I entered this world of water safety and drowning prevention? And I have videos, and I'll own it, like prior to that, of jumping off the low water crossing bridge in Austin, and I didn't have a life jacket on, or jumping off Black Rock in Maui. Like, I think we all, if we look really truly, acknowledge, like, we didn't know, I didn't know, you know, I didn't think about it. And then once it's in your consciousness, we can make those safer,
Yeah.
better decisions. So you're not, you know, I'm not going to take all the males to take all the thing. I can own some poor decision making too.
Yeah, if I can just address that one topic about we call it voluntary departure from a boat.
Yep.
So this is when, you know, we get into that open water, but it's voluntary departure from a boat, whether you're water skiing, you're tubing, you're hot and you just want to go for a dunk, or maybe you have to go to the bathroom, right? That happens a lot too. People just jump off the boat to go to the
Yep.
bathroom. And we had a family up in Maryland last year. Their kids got hot. So nobody will ever understand the thinking here, but they told them to take their life jackets off and jump in. So the 2 kids took their life jackets off and jumped in. They thought the boat was anchored, and they didn't use the what we call the maneuver is called boater's eye to really determine if your boat is not moving. But the anchor was not set. The boat was drifting in the current. So the kids got quickly separated from the boat and started to panic. The father took his life jacket off and jumped in, and
Oh,
one child and the father both drowned. So it's that thinking. And I think just this week we had somebody lose their hat on a boat, and they jumped in after the hat and didn't resurface, no life jacket on. So it's this that I want to stress, and I say this so often to people. Swimming in an open water environment, and Alissa, you can just attest to this as a triathlete, but it is not at all
it,
the same as swimming in a pool.
yep.
You can't
Yep.
see through the water. There's critters in there. There's vegetation and things. The water's moving. So it is
Temperature.
the temperature. So if you think, well, I'm a strong swimmer in a pool, let me just jump off this boat. It is not the same, and they need to put a life jacket on before they depart from that vessel.
Well, this is an interesting thing, and I would love to. I'm channeling my colleague and good friend Courtney Klein from Swim for Life Colorado, who is she has a swim school in Evergreen, Colorado, and she has a pool. She has a pool that has a current in it, and so her whole thing is teaching. Her lessons are all about teaching, taking your skills that you learn to swim in a calm pool or whatever, turning on the current, and then having to adapt to open water conditions and being able to have swim skills and water competency that translate from that clear, calm pool. Obviously that pool is still clear, but you're able to adjust to to adapt to different environments. And that is like something I'm getting all kinds of thoughts in my head right now of like how we could push this out together. Is that whole thing from most people learn how to swim in a calm, clear pool with steps and ladders, and they can get out really easily. And then they take those skills that they learned to an open water environment, but they don't have the skills to adapt to that environment, whether they're on a boat and they get off the boat to get in, or they go to the ocean, and there's totally different environment. And it's huge, and
Well, I want to, really hit that temperature thing for a second because, this is a weird time of year sometimes because, yeah, if you're on the Gulf right now, that water temperature is already about 80 degrees through at least most of the Southern Gulf, through the Keys up through the Tampa St. Pete area. But, I was just talking with John Fetterman at NASBLA last week, and as we know, John's up in Maine, and I don't know what made me look at this, but I just pulled up like water temperatures on the northern Atlantic coast, and right now the water temperature right off the coast of Maine, it may have gone up a little bit this week, but I think it was in the low 50s, and
50s. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's gonna keep creeping up, but I don't think sometimes people realize that water below 70 degrees is cold water, and seeing a water temperature of 62 degrees, even though the air temperature is 82 degrees, you think, oh, if I fall in, it's hot outside, it's no big deal. But that temperature is challenging.
It's huge. It's huge. I just wrote an article for the Leadville paper here about water safety and talked about the check the water conditions, and the water temperature is one of those things. I mean, I'm in Colorado, it's all snow melt. With the water, if the lakes are melted, or the rivers it's snow melt, so it's cold. Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk. So we'll create with this campaign. I think the tagline is know your water, know your skill level.
Yep.
Make sure that they match, because otherwise you're going to get yourself into a situation
Yep.
of your skill level.
And that's something I know we at NDPA have been bringing up for some time. We talk about water competency, right, as one of our 5 layers of protection to reduce the risk of drowning. And, I've been trying to tell people water competency is not a static thing, right? You may be water competent in that 85-degree pool that has no current in anything, but then when you go out to that environment and you're not water competent, right, that you need to understand how your own skill level, yes, you may be a swimmer and a boater, but in that environment, you're not prepared to, do what you can do in an 80-degree pool. And I don't think that's a message we can push out enough to our young adults, especially.
Agree. I would like to be part of that campaign, Peg. For real.
Well, and Peg, I do want to if you don't mind talking a little bit about the Wear It campaign, what this campaign is. I know this has been an ongoing campaign, but I think the marketing keeps getting better and better. And I know you're able to produce PSAs each year, and I love seeing the I'm a real boater, that kind of mindset, because one of the things that I know we've been challenged with, and I'm sure you share the same challenges, education is one part of it, right? We need people to be aware that they're at risk so they can understand that they need to take safety steps for their own health and well-being. But that doesn't always translate into behavior change. And, I think that's something, out of all the campaigns around water safety, I think where it has done probably the best job at starting to think through some of those behavior changes that we want to see.
Yeah, so it really is about a cultural shift, and we can count on mandates to help us a little bit. We just had a mandate come through with the engine cutoff switch, for example, and so that's certainly helping us now. We can educate that this is the law, so you have to do it, kind of thing. But yeah, the Safe Boating campaign is kind of our umbrella campaign for all of our campaigns, with a central message of the simplest thing you can do to protect yourself and your passengers on the water is just wear a life jacket. And then, of course, we have these other boating safety tips that we add on to that as well. Um, Distracted boating is a huge component towards incident rate. So don't be on your phone. Always have that 360 view of what's going on. Have other people on your vessel as well, keeping a proper lookout. Um, even if it's not required in your state, get your online boating safety certificate. It's free at boatus.org. You can go online and get that for free. It's about depending on how smart you are, it's a 4 to 6 hours kind of student you are. Course took me 6 hours, I will say. But I also didn't do it in one chunk, so I could sign on, do a couple hours, sign on, do a couple hours. But it's amazing what you'll learn about navigation aids, for example, which is really important for people, and just some basic boating safety. But get that boating safety card, get some education behind you. Definitely boat sober. We all get dehydrated out on the water, but let's hydrate with some non-alcoholic and save the alcohol until we get back to shore. And check the weather. And here's a big part of checking the weather is heed the warning. We are finding out, through some of our data that there's a certain part of the boating population that will see a weather warning and say, well, you know what, it's my day off, and they'll go out anyway. Um, and then again, know your water, know your skill level, right? Find themselves in a situation that they're finding challenging. So, yeah, that Safe Boating campaign, we manage National Safe Boating Week, which we're going into.
When is that? When is
Yeah,
National Safe Boating Week?
so we'll start with Friday, May 17th is Wear Your Life Jacket at Work Day. So we look forward to seeing a lot of fun images and video online from our partners and members around the country, really around the world. It's just such a great fun event, just a way to remind people about the importance of life jackets. If you're going to be on a boat or in an open water environment, just wear a life jacket. So we're going to start with that. National Safe Boating Week is May 18th through the 24th. So we're going to do a lot of media events and just tons of stuff on social media. But you can get all those resources for National Safe Boating Week for free at safeboatingcampaign.com.
Make the assumption that the reason that is the week is because it leads us to Memorial Day weekend or close to, and a long, busier boating season. Is that the intention of the timing of all of that?
It is.
Yeah.
And some people may not know that National Safe Boating Week is actually a presidential proclamation. So we write the proclamation and we send it to the Coast Guard and they edit it, and then it goes to Homeland Security, and eventually it ends up on the president's desk. And the president will sign that in declaring National Safe Boating Week. But yeah, it's funny for us in Florida to think about kicking off the boating season because we
Right.
have around boating season, right? But it really, for the rest of the country, kicks off that boating season so that we have 3 or 4 months of 7 days a week. People are out on the waterways.
That's awesome. Well, and I do have to give a shout out to the entire boating safety community because so last week I was at the Life Jacket Association conference in Clearwater, Florida, and our friend Tom Dardis from the Coast Guard presented out on their data report. And I earlier in the day before Tom had given a presentation just on the totality of U.S. drowning statistics. And one of the things I often bring up is, we did a great job from 1980 to 2000 for cutting our totality of drowning rate in this country by far more than half. And then from 2000 to 2019, it all stayed fairly steady. And then, as Alissa and I were talking earlier today, the CDC, if most people aren't aware, I know this recording will come out after, but the CDC yesterday released a vital signs report that had some staggering increases. 1 to 4-year-olds 2022 compared to 2019, 28% increase overall in total drownings. African American Black people on a whole, 28% increase 2019 compared to 2022. One shocking one, older adults. When we just look at drowning by age category now, adults 65 and older are now the second highest drowning rate. When we just looking by age, 65 to 74-year-olds say a 19, almost 20% increase comparing 22 to 2019. And the reason I bring that up is not to just dwell on the negativity of where we're at with our drowning statistics, but on the boating statistics side, it is almost the exact opposite, where Tom put up that chart to show where, boating fatalities were in the 1970s and trailing that into, where we're at now. I mean, it is just an incredible feat of reducing those number of boating accidents and the fatalities associated with it. So, I know sometimes we look at boating safety and water safety as being separate, but it's all one issue. And I know this is kind of a lot, but one of the other things that we recognize is 4,500 total drowning deaths between and that's including boating incidents or water transport incidents as the CDC classifies them. But well over 2,000 of our drowning numbers are adults who are drowning in natural waterways. They're not boating, whether they have voluntarily left a boat to, go swimming or use the restroom or do something else, or whether they're just going to an undesignated swim site. And really our number one recommendation, even in those undesignated swim sites, are life jackets. And it's really knowing your own limitations. So, I guess one, I have to say, kudos to the boating safety community for all the work that's been done over the last 50 years to save lives and impact that's really coming through in the data. And just to say, we all have a lot of work to do just in general water safety to really see that same reduction. But there's so many similarities, Peg, to what we're talking about of the behavior side and the thought of not overestimating your ability in the water.
Yeah, I think it's some of the just from my experience working with the youth groups, 300 kids in underserved communities coming through my camps, those kids did not know how to swim. Their parents did not know how to swim, and they weren't offered the opportunity to learn how to swim. So that's where we need to change as a society, is that we can't just have pools inside of gated communities. We can't just have pools inside of country clubs. We need to offer the opportunity to learn to swim to everyone.
Equal access.
We definitely need equal access. And then as far as getting into boating, I would, people ask me, how did you become a boater? And I have to say, I got invited. And that is how most people start boating, is somebody invites them to go boating, right? So invite somebody to go boating. Let's get more people introduced.
And she put that out as a challenge. I think I'm gonna take that challenge on, and when I get the first opportunity to get my stand-up paddleboard out, I have 2 of them, so I'm going to every time I go, I'm gonna try to invite somebody new. Maybe I'll build the community, because my stand-up paddleboard comes with a life jacket no matter what that goes on your body. I don't care who you are.
A trip out to Leadville to visit Alissa at
Yes,
absolutely.
One other thing, Peg, before we get to our final question, and I know I said there'd be 2 questions I'm going to ask you, but I am going to toss a third one your way, just because I think this is a challenge, and I'm curious just to know your viewpoint on it, right? I mean, boating, as much as it is regulated in this country, there is some unregulated pieces. And what I mean by that is, we look at big box retailers, right? Like I can go up to my local sporting goods store and I know they have probably 3 aisles full of kayaks and canoes that I can buy. The great part is they have a whole life jacket section right next to it, and they have a huge amount of life jackets. But the reason I bring that up is I think it's challenging because someone can go up there this afternoon if I wanted to go buy a kayak, go right out to my state park, put that on the water, and I don't maybe have the right education or the right background to do it. And even, I'm going to just call it out, selecting the right life jacket, right? It can be confusing. I was in a life jacket aisle actually at my local sporting goods store just a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I'm going to check out the life jacket section. And they had two full aisleways of just multiple, rows of life jackets and huge different varieties, amounts, different types and everything. But I know it's challenging too, just being a consumer, trying to make sense of what is the right life
Decisions.
jacket to buy. So how do you guys at the council, look at that, and do you see that as a challenge, I guess?
Yeah, from my first experience with boating, I told you I bought the wrong
I was
kayak.
gonna say
I bought,
she's your perfect.
I
Her
bought all
story
the
is the
wrong
perfect
equipment,
thing.
and then I hated it, right? So I think that is a problem when people go buy their gear and their equipment at a big box store. On the other hand, isn't it good to kind of see some of that becoming more affordable? So we
Yeah.
have to kind of weigh those two things. But we have to realize that when somebody goes to Costco or Sam's and buys a kayak and a life jacket, they're not getting any education. Nobody on
Right.
the floor was over there talking to them about what size, what kind of equipment to buy and how to use it, right?
Yeah.
So I think we'd love to get them on board more so that there is some point of sale, I think education, whether it's just signage or just something, right? Buy this kayak and now look at safeboatingcampaign.com and learn more or something like that. Is trying to get some education to people. I remember being at the Estero boat ramp once and I was watching this man unload like an 8-foot kayak and he's hauling it down and he's like 6'2". And I kept watching him get all his gear ready. And I said, "Is that kayak for you?" And he said, "Yeah, I just bought it." And he probably bought it at Sam's or Costco. And I said, "Well, I can tell you, you're not going to like it." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because it's only 8 feet long and you're about 6 feet tall. So it's not going to hold you up very well." And he looked at me like I was crazy. He got in it and he capsized. So
Did he have a life jacket
he
with
did.
that
He
safe?
did. He
Okay, well
immediately
that's
flipped
good.
over and he couldn't get, and I said, "Just go back and get one that's at least 14 feet long and you'll be fine." But it's just that point of sale, um, without, it lacks the education. So that's certainly a challenge for us. So that's where we have our outreach events, that we have at launch point signage to remind people, life jacket loaner stations. We have the wear it signs at launch points with the pre-drilled holes. They're free. You can get them from our warehouse. Um, so really just, trying to get education to people who are buying kayaks in that way.
That's great. Well, all right, I'm going to jump right into our final question. So
I love this question.
I know it's become my favorite part of the podcast, honestly, is so Peg, I am handing you a magic water safety wand that you could change one thing, big or small. What would you change in the world of water safety?
So this one is just so easy. And that would be that any vessel 16 feet and under would require mandatory life jacket wear, not carriage, but wear.
Yeah.
And just think about that part of the statistics, the 16 feet and under vessels. So that would cover my boat. I drive a 14-foot low John boat with a 25 horsepower Mercury. So, and I always wear my life jacket, but that would cover those kind of fishing boats, boats used for duck hunting. And I can tell you, duck hunters, they don't even know they're boaters. They're just using that to get to their duck blind, and they're overpacking the boat with all their gear. So it would cover all of those, and then it would cover the majority of paddlecraft, whether it's canoe, kayak, stand-up paddleboard. Those people that are closer to the water, that maybe got their equipment without any education or training whatsoever, and just an easy way to keep everybody safe on the water.
I love that because, I have to say we, obviously just like you do a lot of media this time of year. And when I started this year, when I talk about swim lessons and life jackets in our media messaging, I give a call out to adults and both of them saying, hey, adults, if you don't know how to swim, it's not too early to get your kid into swim lessons, but it's not too late to get yourself into swim lessons because you need these skills just as much as they do. And then, when we talk about life jackets, I usually say, just the general life jacket messaging, but I've started to really break it down and say, look, if your child's required to wear a life jacket in a boat, please wear one yourself, because the reality is you're the same risk. And what is your child going to do if you fall off of the boat and need help? They're not going to be able to save you, but if you wear your life jacket, it's going to prevent them from having a tragic experience. And it just models good behavior, and it sets that tone for the next generation.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both. And Peg, thank you for you and all of your colleagues and all the work you do in the boating safety world. Thank you for keeping all of our folks safe on the waterways this summer season, and all the work your team does. And especially thank you for being a water safety champion and joining us on the NDPA Water Safety Champion podcast. Alissa?
Yes, so I love the know your water, know your skill. Sign me up if you need help with that campaign. I think that is brilliant. I think it's a message that people can relate to and is so applicable. And yeah, thank you for the work that you do. And I have witnessed it through the Wear It campaign for years, and just really believe that this bridge between the pool and the open water and boating is so huge. So thanks for all that you do.
All right, thanks for joining us, Peg, and thank you for our listeners. Tune in as we will continue the NDPA Water Safety Champion podcast all summer long, talking to water safety champions all around the country. Until then, stay safe out there, and happy National Water Safety Month.